Yes, good evening. My name is Nakkungu Deborah, finalist at Makerere University and an economist. I'll be recording tutorials for my colleagues doing economics, those doing quantitative economics, BA Econ, and to some extent development economics, science in economics, and other relevant courses. So I'll be dealing with specifically 6 course units, including intermediate, macroeconomics, public sector economics, health economics, amongst others. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel and receive other tutorials that will be coming in. So today I'm going to be specifically taking you through intermediate macroeconomics and our very first topic, which is the theory of economic growth. As you all know that economic growth, if you are looking at economic growth, we look at specifically the long run economic aggregates. Like we can look at things like GDP per capita of a given economy. For us to have economic growth, it means that our current level or amount of investment exceeds the amount necessary to cater for depreciation. That's why we can have a business cycle where the next periodic cycle is higher than the previous cycle. So basically that is what you're looking at. Some people refer to economic growth as the quantitative increase in the volume of goods and services produced in an economy in a given period of time. But at our level, so what we really concentrate on are the long run economic aggregates. So there are really different facts about economic growth, and according to some economists like Calder in 1993, he came up with some stylized facts about economic growth, and they include these that I've listed down here. The first fact is that per capita output grows over time and it does not tend to diminish. We shall go on proving that. If you are looking at the capital output ratio, it is fact number 5. The capital output ratio is fixed, it is constant. We look at another fact about economic growth is that the growth rate of labor differs substantially across different countries. Like the growth rate of labor in Uganda is not the same as that one of Kenya, so the growth rate differs substantially across countries. Another fact is that the return of capital is nearly constant, among others. So those are some of the stylized facts about economic growth. Now, what we specifically or majorly are interested in are the theories of economic growth, because these theories enable a given country, different analysts, to come up with growth rates of their countries, or to analyze how their countries are growing. So we look at what different theorists came up with, and then we use those theories to also come up with the growth rates, or to know where we are standing as a country. So we have, if we are talking of these types of growth theories, we have static growth theories and endogenous growth theories. Now static, we can also refer to them as exogenous growth theories. Of course, these theories are those that build on the Keynesian theories of growth. Now under these static theories, as we shall see later on, is that their key component is that we exogenize, or the key variables or components that explain the theory are fixed or are constant. You have no control over them, they are fixed. Now the opposite goes for endogenous growth theories. For those theories, the key variables or components are not fixed, meaning that it can allow for policy. You have influence, they are not constant. So now under static growth theories, we have different theories under the static growth theories, and one of the theories which I will start with specifically is the Harrod-Domar model. Now this, as I said, falls under the static growth theories, and if you're looking at this Harrod-Domar model, of course it was developed separately by two personalities, that is Harrod and Domar. These two individuals came up with different growth theories, but it turned out that they had the same views. things that they were writing about or developing were the same ideas. So that's why this theory was like they combined both their views, Harrod and Domar, to come up with the Harrod-Domar model of economic growth. Now, this theory also specifically developed from the Keynesian theory of growth, and there are different assumptions that underlie this theory. We have assumptions about the theory and assumptions about the production function. There are different things. Now, if you are looking at the assumptions about the theory, we can the best or the key assumption about the Harrod-Domar growth theory is that we look at a fixed proportion production function. This implies that from this equation that I presented here, it implies that we use a combination of scarce factor inputs to produce output. So if we are talking of a fixed proportion production function, it means that we use a scarce combination, in this case of capital and labor, to produce our output YT. Fixed also means that we cannot substitute amongst our factor inputs. Second example, here we are looking at our factor inputs as capital and labor. We cannot substitute them. So the production function under the Harrod-Domar growth model is a fixed proportion production function, and that is the key assumption about this theory. The second assumption is that there is no technological progress. The savings rate is fixed, meaning that our savings are a fixed function of income, and this is the equation that I presented down here. Now, those were the assumptions about the theory. Now we go further ahead to look at the assumptions about the production function. So if they are specifically asking for the assumption about the production function, you shouldn't put the assumptions about the theory, because there are two different things. So the first assumption, as I said, is that this production function we are looking at is a fixed proportion production function. That's why I say, or I represented it here as YT is equal to minimum a function of K over theta L over alpha, meaning we use a scarce combination of factor inputs to produce our output. The second assumption about the production function is that the factor inputs are fixed and they cannot be substituted. As I said, it's a fixed proportion production function, meaning that there is no way we can substitute these factor inputs, but these factor inputs can complement each other. So if you're using 50 units of labor and 20 units of capital, it means that you cannot substitute. Maybe you reduce labor and instead of 50 you use 40, and then capital you increase it. Maybe if initially you're using 20, the 10 that you've removed from labor go to capital. No, it's not possible under this production function. Factor inputs are fixed, we cannot substitute amongst them. That's why we can have a linear L if we are to represent it graphically. No substitution among these factor inputs. So the third assumption about the production function is that if we say that this is our production function, it means that for an economy, if you want a situation where we can achieve full employment, if YT is equal to minimum F of this, as you see in the production function, it means that for us to achieve full employment, it has to be right that the ratios of these factor inputs must be equal to the ratios of their shares. That's why I say that if YT, since YT is equal to minimum F K over L over alpha, then it means that for us to have full employment to occur, means that K over L must be equal to the theta over alpha. And the fourth assumption is that the factor inputs exhibit constant returns to scale. Since we said that from the sterilized facts about economic growth, we had a fact that says that the shares of capital and labor in national income is constant. So from the fact that these shares of capital and labor, and the shares are the alpha and the theta is the share of capital in the production process, then alpha is the share of labor in the production process or the production function. So the fact that these shares are fixed, it only tells us that the these factor inputs, capital and labor, exhibit constant returns to scale. So I gave a brief note here just to tell you what the alpha and the theta is. I said the alpha is the share of labor in the production process, which I said previously, or we can call it the labor output ratio. Then the theta, I said it is the share of capital, but we can also call it the capital output ratio, and it is key in this theory that we are looking at, the capital output ratio. So our major thing is to understand the derivation of this model. Now, in deriving any model, the best thing, or what is basically very important, is for us to tell how do we produce this output. What is our output function or equation? How is output produced? Just to say that we developed from the Keynesian theory of growth. Remember, from Keynesian theory of growth, we say that how do we get our output, or what is our aggregate demand? If you are looking at a two-sector economy, that aggregate demand is equal to what we consume plus what we save, right? As someone else can write it as aggregate demand, which is the output, is equal to what you consume plus what you invest. Because in this situation, or when you are looking at these theories, the best thing that we look at is that the economy will clear, and the economy clears at the point where savings are equal to investments. It just means that whatever savings you have, or whatever you save as an economy or as a country, has to be turned into investment. So the market has to clear. So if I write this, if I write C plus S, it is the same as also writing C plus I, because we said we are having a point where the market will clear and these two are equal. So having known our output function, what we have to go ahead and know for us to derive this model is the capital accumulation equation. How do we accumulate capital? So, and equation 1, what I represented as equation 1, is our capital accumulation equation, showing that our change in capital is equal to I, this is investments, minus sigma kt. The sigma is the depreciation of capital. So it just means that our change in capital is equal to our net investments, or what we have as the net investments as an economy, minus the total depreciation of capital, minus the capital that depreciated, which is the sigma kt. So our equation 1 is the capital accumulation equation, and it is the capital accumulation equation that will help us basically to derive the Harrod-Domar equation. So equation number 1 is really important in our derivation. Remember, we said that the market clears, and that is the point where our savings are equal to investment. So from our equation 1, we can as well represent equation 1 as change in K being equal to S minus sigma kt. I've represented the investments with the savings because we said they are equal. So we come up with equation 2. So our next step here, from the capital accumulation equation, what we did is to substitute the I with the S. Then our next step here is to divide by K, or by our capital stock. We divide equation 2 by capital stock, or by K. So we divide each thing here. So that's what we have here. Change in K over K is equal to, we also divide the S by K, the sigma K by K, right? So we come up with this that you're seeing as equation 3. Change in K over K is equal to S over K minus sigma, because the K went with the K after dividing by K. So now, what I did here in equation 3 is, now if we have a given variable, we multiply something. Let's say if we have 2, we multiply 2 by 3 and divide by 3, the result will be a 2, right? If we have a 4, we multiply it by 3 and divide by 3, we shall still remain with a 4. So it means that if I multiply and divide by the same variable, I come up with the same thing, or I remain with the same thing. If you have 2 over 2, 2 over 2 is 1, right? If I have 5 over 5 is 1. So it means that if I'm to multiply maybe 5 times 2 over 2, still I remain with a 5. So what I'm going to do is that this equation we came up with after dividing by capital stock, we are going to multiply and divide by income. We are going to multiply each variable here, or we are going to divide each parameter here. We are going to multiply and divide each parameter by y over y. So when we multiply change in k over k by y over y, we remain with change in k over k. Now in this case where we have s over k, this will sometimes confuses people. What I did here is, because if I have s over k times y over y, even if I say s over y times y over k, it is the same. It is the same as saying s over k times y over y. So what I did here is to make it, or to represent it as s over y times y over k, the same. So minus the sigma, as I said, if you multiply sigma by y and divide by y, we shall end up with what? With sigma. Now what is s over y? We said, remember from the assumptions about the Harrod-Domar Growth model, we said that the savings rate is fixed, and the savings is a fixed proportion of income. That's why I presented a function, an equation, as s is equal to s over y, meaning that if I want to get this small, this is the capital S, the total savings, and the small s represents the savings rate, the y represents the output or income. Now if I want to get this small s, it means that I'll divide each side by y, right? And then I divide each side by y, I come up with small s being equal to the capital S over y. So if you come to this situation where we have a capital S over y, so it means that this s over y is our small s, the savings rate, and y over k, remember we say that the capital output ratio theta is k over y, right? So if we have y over k, it's like we are having an inverse of the theta. It's like we are having 1 over theta. So from that, I just wrote here a brief thing to remember that s over y is the savings rate, y over k is the inverse capital output ratio, which we can write as 1 over theta. So if we rewrite our equation 3, remember this change in k over k is like we are having kt plus 1 minus kt over kt. It's like we are looking at the growth rate of capital. So change in k over k is the growth rate of capital, and I say let us represent the change in k over k with the k representing growth rate of capital, being equal to, as we said, the other was an s, a small s, then times 1 over theta, which gave us our s over theta minus the sigma. This equation that we have here is the growth rate of capital is equal to the savings rate divided by the capital output ratio minus our rate of depreciation. But remember, if we are looking at economic growth, as I said, we are looking at the long run economic aggregates. We are looking at the quantity. We are looking at the quantitative increase or decline in the amount of goods and services produced in an economy. So if you're looking at growth rate of capital, it means that you're not looking at the growth we want. All we aim at, or what we want to know, is the growth rate of income. Now in this case, it means that we have to find out what is change in y over y, or which we can call give y. Now for us to analyze that, what we have to know here is that when we are looking at some of the key issues here, we have to understand is that since we say that the factor inputs or the shares of these inputs are fixed of capital and labor, we realize that this capital and labor define our output. We realize that the growth rate of output is equal to the growth rate of capital, and that is what we have to prove to come up with our final model. Now remember, I said that the theta is the capital output ratio, right? And we said that theta is equal to K over Y, capital over output, right? Now for us to understand what we want is we introduce natural logs from our theta. Theta is equal to K over Y. As you know, in logarithm where we have a division, we subtract, right? So we introduce natural logs, and we come up with this equation: ln theta is equal to ln K minus ln Y. Because we are dividing, that's why we are subtracting here in logs. So our next step after turning it into natural logs, we differentiate. We get the derivative of this new log equation. As you know, if we are differentiating in natural logarithm, in natural logs, this is what we do, or what we come up with. So if we differentiate ln theta, we shall come up with 1 over theta d theta dt, like we are differentiating with respect to time, being equal to 1 over k dk dt minus 1 over y dy dt. Now remember, from the beginning I told you that the shares of capital and labor in national income are fixed, meaning that the theta and the alpha are fixed, right? And if we are differentiating, if we come to derivatives, if we differentiate a constant, that is a 0, right? And dk dt is the change in k, right? If you are saying dk dt, change in k over change in t, so it's a change in k. So that's why here it's more of I'm having 1 over k times a change in k, which is the same as change in k over k. The same applies to ln y. If we differentiate it, we come up with 1 over y dy dt. So the dy dt is the change in y, then times the 1 over y, which gives us the change in y over y. Now as I told you that this change in k over k is the growth rate of what? Of capital. And the change in y over y is the growth rate of output. So you can represent this with a gk and this with a gy, meaning that growth rate of output and growth rate of capital respectively. So meaning that here we've proved that the growth rate of output is equal to the growth rate of capital. So from this equation here, where we're having a gk, that shows that the growth rate of capital is equal to this, we can as well put this as gy, because we've proved that they are the same. So that's why we rewrite our final equation as gy is equal to s over theta minus sigma. So equation 4 is the heart of the Harrod-Domar growth model, and we call this the Harrod-Domar model, or we can call it the warranted growth rate. We call it the warranted growth rate because, as we said, that the market has to clear all savings, or the levels or the amounts of savings must be turned into investments. So this equation 4 is the warranted, we can call it the warranted growth rate, or we call it the Harrod-Domar model. It is what really defines the Harrod-Domar growth model. So from this equation, we can be able to see that what really determines growth according to Harrod and Domar is the savings rate of a given country and the capital output ratio. So it means that for any country, because we are seeing a positive relationship, a direct relationship between the savings rate and the growth rate of output, it means that for any country to grow, or for any country to have an increasing growth rate, it means that their savings rate must be increasing. So as a country progresses in terms of savings, it means that this country will be growing. The same means that as a country, if a country has an inefficient level of of the capital output ratio, it means that the less that given country will be growing. So for an economy to grow, you have to have, or your levels of savings must be increasing, and your capital output ratio must be efficient. If you have a high capital output ratio, there will be no growth of that economy, because you are seeing an inverse relationship between the two. Efficient capital output ratio meaning what? Efficient means that you need less levels, you need less capital to produce a given level of output. If let's say you needed 10 let's say 10 machines to produce, let's say 1000 units of a given product. Efficient capital output ratio means that you can produce still the 1000 units of a given product using less. Maybe you can use 5 units of of capital. So efficient means that you need less to produce, you need less capital to produce the same level of output. So this is the Harrod-Domar Growth model. Thank you for viewing.